So the Dark Mechanicum is a faction in 40k that people have been wanting to become an army for a long time now, alongside the Emperor's Children, ever since GW started making the 4 Chaos God legions into their own mini armies. One thing that pops into my head when I think of Dark Mechanicum as an army is that what would their rules be? How would they play? And that's what I want to talk about here. What could the theoretical army rule of the Dark Mechanicum be? First, we should define what they are all about. Votann and Death Guard are slow in lore, and so they're slow in the game. Defining them as a faction will help make these fake rules. They got their start during the Horus Heresy, when everyone on Mars basically split in half between the followers of the Emperor and the followers of Horus. After that, the two halves became the Dark Mechanicum and the Adeptus Mechanicus. This is important as the two factions have the same core goal to discover knowledge. The primary difference is that the Dark Mechanicum has no restrictions and believes in taking knowledge from chaos as well. So with that, we can safely say, given they both come from the same place, that they will have similar rules with the army. So we can safely say that because they both come from the same place, their army rules will have similarities. We can then use the Adeptus Mechanicus rules to help us create the rules for the Dark Mechanicum. Currently in the 10th edition of 40k, the rules for the Adeptus Mechanicus is that at the beginning of every turn, you get to pick between two doctrinas. One is a defensive one, and the other one is an offensive one. In short, it is about picking between two different buffs, and we can take that into the rules for the Dark Mechanicum. Also, because they are a Chaos faction, we should look at the Chaos Space Marine rules as well. And their rules are as follows. Whenever you make a shooting or fighting attack, you can decide to make a Dark Pact. A Dark Pact means that you make a Battle Shock test and then roll a d3 and take that amount of mortal wounds if you fail. Either way, you get the buff, but you risk taking damage. With this information, I think we can bring down the idea that I have for the rules for this supposed army. Because they are chaos, they should have a bit more melee, so let's ditch the defensive army idea and have a melee focused one. This could maybe take the form of a speed boost, but I'm going with more like melee attacks. So you will have the choice between shooting or melee buffs, basically. So here is my idea. First one, I'm just going to dub Bombardment Protocol. The idea is that it will increase your ballistic skill by 1 and also increase the armor penetration characteristic by 1. This is to buff shooting, but I also left it vague for the armor penetration buff so that the melee weapons for melee only models, which I would assume this army to have at least a couple of, will still get a buff from being in the Bombardment Protocol. But here's the major difference between both Chaos Space Marines and admec that I would like this rule to have. A sacrifice rule. No matter what, if you want to get the sacrifice buff, you have to take a d3 mortal wounds. Assuming that characters have 3 health, similar to in admec, this could risk you putting a character at 1 health. Assuming that the army's battle line is a 10-man with 1 HP like in admec, this would be 3 models dead potentially. But I say the buff is worth it because crits will now trigger on 4 ups instead of on 6s for all shooting attacks and all fighting attacks. Yes, it is strong, but you are guaranteeing damage to yourself by taking the sacrifice roll. Although I will say, I did not state this when writing this down. The trigger for the sacrifice roll should be whenever you are deciding to make a shooting or melee attack. So then there is the situation to where you have a character that can shoot and melee. You could get into the situation where you were in Bombardment Protocol, made a sacrifice to shoot, make a sacrifice to get the 4-up triggers, and you rolled a 2, and you made the sacrifice to get the 4-up triggers, and you rolled a 3, and you took 3 mortal wounds. That would leave that character on 1 health, and you decide to charge that character and make another sacrifice roll for the melee. You could run into the situation of, I instantly kill that character. So you can get into the situation where you could potentially make 2 sacrifices in one turn and not kill your character, but the likelihood of doing that increases. And assuming the army has some form of healing, this could add real nice combos to having a powerful unit attached to a guy whose whole ability is bringing back units dead. Or perhaps there could be a named character that has a whole ability around negating the sacrifice mortal wounds. Just an idea. The second protocol is the assault protocol. This one increases weapons ballistic skill. The second protocol is called the assault protocol. It increases the weapon skill by 1. It also increases all weapon strength by 1. And the sacrifice buff is you add 5 to the number of attacks. I picked 5 because that's Vastor's number apparently. At least that's what I was able to find. I personally like these rules. The problem with them is that GW would probably make their actual data sheets kind of sucky to okay because of the rules being good. But that's also why I made the sacrifice rules non-negotiable. Unless you had a character that maybe either reduced the damage taken by them, because I could see maybe instead of a martial equivalent simply giving you a -1 to mortal wounds. I see that as an interesting idea. Of course, I would say this army should be a 4-up shooting and melee army, similar to admec. Probably the same toughness as admec as well, so hanging out around that 3 to 4 area. All of admec actually has a 5+ invuln save, which means that their armor save can never go below 5. I would give them that too, but probably make it a 6-up. To give them the vibe that their technology, although good and more powerful than the Adeptus Mechanicus technology, except for probably some standouts, that it's just generally more unstable, so it's less reliant. And I also like the idea of them being kind of like the Eldar, where they have models that have very particular roles. You don't have the, I think the unit is called the Flaming Spears, or Fire Dragons. It's something along those lines, where their whole job is they're anti-tank. All of them have melter weapons, so they are very good against tanks, but very bad against infantry because of the low amount of shots. So I like the idea of them having that similar type of role. Perhaps even some data sheets could have an ability that is triggered whenever you make the sacrifice roll, like let's say reducing it, or perhaps a sniper unit. A unit could gain precision when in the assault doctrine, and they make a sacrifice roll. I like that idea. Either way, I kind of ran through this rant until the end. I can't make art or units for this. I'm not a good game developer. This is kind of just an idea I've had that I kind of wanted to talk about. So yeah, I still don't know how to end these things.